The year? 2008. Little Cardivox is sitting on a bus coming back from California. He just finished an acro tour, lasted about 4 days. Southern California, Northern California, and even parts of Arizona, his home state. He goes to a small conservative Christian high school. Attendance is tiny, about 200 people. Graduating class will soon be only 26. His friend is sitting behind him, CJ. CJ leans forward. He's got an MP3 on his PlayStation Portable. He says, "Hey, Mark, you got to listen to this song. It's the best song ever." And Mark says, "Okay, sure. What are we talking?" And he says, "Metal." Little Mark, a.k.a. Cardivox, is sitting there, and he says, "Oh, like Metallica." CJ says, "No, this is something different." What's the song? Slow Dance by Bring Me the Horizon. And then after that, I listened to Pray for Plagues, and it blew my mind. What's up, everybody? Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and today we're going back in time because I want to. That's the whole reason. We're checking out Pray for Plagues by Bring Me the Horizon. Now, I'm excited to talk about this one because obviously it's been out for a very long time. All of us know about it, but every once in a while I get a student in who is a big fan of Bring Me the Horizon, but has never gone so far back in their discography, and it's always fun to be like, this is where they started. Now, obviously, I've heard this song thousands of times. So I know all the spots to pause and all the spots to talk about, but I kind of wanted to do a throwback because this song was so iconic back in the day, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as the song goes on. But if you're new to the channel, again, my name is Mark. I'm a metal vocalist myself of about 14 years. I'm in a band called Kardashev. We are on Metal Blade Records. We've released a couple albums in the past couple of years. Check them out if you want to. I'm also a full-time vocal coach. I specialize in teaching people harsh vocals, things like, fly safely and efficiently without a whole lot of effort to keep them going in their metal vocal journey. And if you like the content here where I sort of pause and do vocal analysis and break down what's going on here, either what the vocalist is doing or if I would do it differently, I'll show you what I would do. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to watch the channel grow. And let's go back. Let's go back to 2000. I think I forgot what I said in my goofy little intro, but I was a little guy. I was a little guy when this came out. Let's check out Bring Me the Horizon, Pray for Plagues. Here we go. God, I feel like a child. This is taking me back. This is really a throwback. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things here. Now, one thing I want to get out there is Oli Sykes has never really been known for a lot of his vocal health or safety. Sorry, it's just true. Guy's damaged his voice a couple times. I don't say that to like disparage him or throw shade, but I say that because oftentimes people learn vocals by mimicking the vocalist that they hear, and when they do that and the vocalist is doing things that are unhealthy, it can cause issues, right? Now, this song came out in a time when high metal vocals were the thing, at least in my little part of the world. People loved Alex Kohler of Chelsea Grin. People loved Trevor Strnad, rest in peace, of Black Dahlia Murder. And people loved Oli Sykes of Bring Me the Horizon, right? High vocals were in. We had a couple little metal bands in my school who would practice in the chapel band room of all places. And if you couldn't do high vocals, they weren't interested in you, right? So in the spirit of wishing I could do high vocals when I was just a little guy, let's talk about high vocals here. So when we're doing high vocals, what we have in this space should be a very relaxed false chord based sound. Now, you don't have to do false chord to do high vocals. It's not entirely necessary. But what we do have to do is we have to have an understanding of timbre without squeezing the vocal track. Now, here's what I mean, right? I've talked a lot about high vocals on the channel, so I'm going to talk about a slightly different exercise, so I'm not just repeating myself over and over again. But here's what I mean. When we are talking about timbre, right, we're talking about, put simply, the way that we can make a pitch sound different, right? So I can say, right? There's a different timbre, there's a different quality to each of those. And when we're working with metal vocals, especially metal vocals that don't have an audible underlying pitch, where I could hear somebody scream and be like, oh, that's a D sharp, right? What we're working with is a lot of texture. And when we're working with a lot of texture, we can utilize timbre to do a lot of the work for us versus putting that work in our throat. And we should never really be putting the work around our vocal cords, right? So here's what I mean. If I take my voice and I lift it like this, I sound like one of those old Halloween toys, right? What I feel is I feel a strong buzz in my vocal tract. The back of my tongue is lifting. The soft palate in this case is actually dropping very slightly, and I'm going to get some distortion from it. And if I can do a basic false chord grunt, hey, I, right? Nothing fancy, and I take that and I place it through that space, hi, he, I'll feel the distortion change very, very slightly. It won't be low at the base of my tongue. It's going to be more up in the back of the mouth, right? Rattling those soft tissues in the back, in the pharynx, right? Causing distortion that has a higher sound. And then we can follow that and we can brighten it up utilizing the lips, the tongue, the jaw position, not squeezing the vocal folds. And that would sound something like this. Now what's going to happen is you're going to feel that distortion change place or want to change place, right? You have to allow that to happen. What happens very frequently is a student will be trying to do a false chord high. I've got thoughts on that term, as you can see, but we're not going to talk about it here. They'll be trying to do this false chord high, and they'll take that false chord and they'll try to pull it up into their face, right? It's very similar to when you hear somebody trying to sing in their chest voice and they pull their chest up into their head voice. Right? And you have that like really yelly sound, okay? But what we need to do is we need to relax. When we feel that position, when we feel that spot where we want to squeeze, we need to instead train ourselves to relax, right? And I'll start to feel that a lot of the distortion is coming from the back of my tongue and actually the folds in the back of my mouth, right? The palatopharyngeal folds. So these are things that you can think about, right? Relaxing into the high distortion versus pressing into it. These are very strong fundamentals that we use in clean singing as well. So something to keep in mind. Now, he did some lows here, but we're going to talk about those in a second. Here we go. Here it comes. Here it comes. Get ready. I want to talk about that for a second. So anybody who's watching this video, and I know that this sounds like, you know, the old millennial guy saying back in my day, and I don't mean to differentiate it. I think metal in some ways is better now than it was back then. Although I still have a lot of love for this song. But one thing I want to really get across here is that the breakdown, at least if you were at my age, right? If you were like, you know, between 16 and 18, the breakdown was new. It was new. There were literally shows, there were metal shows where if a band didn't do a breakdown, people would leave. You would actually unironically hear people saying, "Where's the breakdown, bro? Let's get out of here." And they would dip because everybody just wanted to hear dum 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 dum, right? And half the time the breakdowns weren't even that good. They would just be like dum 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 dum. That was it. And people would lose their minds. But it set a precedent, right? And a lot of really good, interesting breakdowns came from it. But let's go ahead and let's talk about vocal technique here. One thing that we're hearing in this song is a false chord low that a lot of new vocalists will do, right? A lot of new vocalists will do. Now, what that involves, and I don't suggest doing this, is taking your voice and going, ooh, 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 ooh. So you've got like a gorilla noise. Ooh, 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 ooh. Now, what's the problem there? I'm creating distortion. What's the issue? Well, if you listen under the distortion, you hear a wheezing sound coming from the vocal cords being very close together and then kind of going, and that can cause them to dry out. First of all, they can be overly tense, so that if they slap together, you can be doing periodic stress and strain and damage to them over time, even if it doesn't hurt in the moment. So generally speaking, when we're doing our vocals, it's okay to put voice underneath them, but we don't want to build on a Now, if you press into it, it does sound like this. I'm not going to do that because that would be really weird if a vocal coach online was like, here's an example of this thing you should never do with your voice. So instead, I'm going to talk to you about how you can get a healthier false chord low. Right now, this is all stuff that I go over in my online course, False Chord Fundamentals. You can check it out at cardivoxacademy.com if you're interested in the self-guided learning thing. Although it's a culmination of everything I have learned and used and taught students over the past 5 or so years. It's very helpful. Or you can just watch this video. So let's do it. So generally speaking, first and foremost, you should be learning false chord on a mid. That's the thing, right? Don't worry about false chord low. Don't worry about false chord high. Don't worry about tunnel throat. Don't worry about gutturals. Focus on just creating false chord distortion by itself in a comfortable, controlled space, right? And what that's going to sound like, there are a lot of different ways to go over it or get here that I do, again, go over in my course. But what that's going to sound like, it's nothing fancy, is here. Hey, hi, Now you can hear underneath there, There's no vocal cord adduction that's resulting in the production of audible, like pitched phonation. Now that's a lot of fancy words to say you don't hear a note. You don't hear ha, 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 or ha, ha, ha underneath there. That second one is what you absolutely do not want. What you hear is mostly texture. Ha, 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 ha. Now, the interesting thing here is to create a better low tone, what we're actually going to do is we're going to get a little brighter and a little forward. We're going to go what feels like the wrong way before we go the right way. Okay, so I'm here, false chord distortion, but it sounds really low, and it is a little low. And this would be uncomfortable if I did for a while. It's very like, I'm Batman, where's the girl? Doesn't sound very usable, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, again, change the timbre from to eh. I'm gonna get a little bit nasally. I don't wanna go hyper nasal. I'm just gonna get forward. Hey. Now you can hear that it's now starting to sound like a more usable false chord growl. It sounds like something you could actually take into a studio and put down a simple track with, right? Now, I'm also getting a lot of engagement from my lower abdominal muscles. I'm holding my ribs out. I've taken a healthy breath down low into the abdomen. Not literally. If you're breathing into your stomach, you've got a perforated lung. That perforation is going through. You're going to die. We visualize breathing down into the abdomen, right? But I feel like I've taken that air down into my abdomen. I'm very relaxed, and I have this Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Mark and I like pizza. And that's your basic false chord growl. So then how do we get that lower? What's the goal? We create more space in the mouth and then we narrow the opening. Hey. And when I lean in like that, I feel a lot of buzzing on my hard palate behind my nose. Okay? Hey. I'm not going to change the grit. I'm going to change the pathway that the grit goes through, and the sound waves are going to bounce around and lengthen and get chunkier on the way out. It's going to sound like this. Hey. If we want to get lower, we can even do like a little bit of a tunnel. We can curl our tongue up to do a guttural. Right? And there's a lot of variation that you can do there. So if you're trying to get your vocals lower, false chord or fry, at least at the beginning level, don't think here, think here. Let's keep going. One thing I will give Oli here, he's got a very big fancy career. He can take a little criticism, all right? He ain't gonna have any issues with little old me jabbing at him a little bit. He'll be fine. One thing that I will give him is that his airflow is nice. Okay. A lot of times when we're running with false chord vocals, it's very hard to hold them for more than like 2 seconds at a time, right? Sometimes people have the idea that they should be able to hold a false chord vocal for like 30 seconds because that one cool vocalist in that one cool band held a vocal for 30 seconds. And now that's the standard I have to have for myself as well. Don't compare yourself to those people because oftentimes they're actually doing fry. They're not doing false chord. And with fry, you're going to hold it for a lot longer without interruption. And another thing about it is that rarely are people screaming at such a slow tempo that their syllables last for 30 seconds. Now, why the heck am I talking about this, right? Well, think about it this way. Let's say this straw is connected to, this straw is connected to a big water tank up here, pretend, right? I'm going to remove my finger. I'm out of water. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a lot more time. I'm going to have a lot more use of that water because I'm slowly opening and closing the space that the water is going through. This isn't a trick or anything. This is just normal articulation, right? When I say words, there are periodic blockages of the vocal tract, and they're normal. They're your lips coming together for a bilabial plosive. They're your tongue coming up for a linguodental fricative or lingual alveolar fricative. That would be linguodental. And these are all just fancy words for saying like a B, a P, and a TH, right? These are going to add a little bit of longevity to your scream because 90% of the time we're doing lyrics, right? But let's say you do want to hold a tone longer. This is where we get into the idea of compression, right? And compression is kind of a buzzy topic because it's a term that does kind of encourage people to squeeze harder than they should. And this is never the case. And it also is usually where people start when in actuality, we want to get the majority of our longevity and our endurance from the way that we're using our air down here, right? When we breathe in, we're expanding those ribs and we're holding them out. The abdominal muscles are expanding, but staying loose and floppy and like a waterbed, right? When we do squeeze, it's like we're trying to like help out a fart a little bit. We're like, right? We got that little squeeze down from the lower abdominal space. This is what we want first and foremost with holding our growls and screams, right? Now, even at this, you're probably only going to hold a foundational false chord noise for like 4 to 6 seconds. But if you want to hold it for a little longer, what we do is we can just very lightly and very strategically narrow the upper airway, not the lower airway, not by the vocal cords themselves, but the upper airway. And there are 2 ways to do this, right? Well, there's one exercise that can help you do this in 2 different ways. What we're going to do is we're going to do a very gentle, huh. Now, here's the thing. That huh should not feel like pressure underneath the vocal cords because it's not about pressure. It's about openings. Okay? Right? Think about it this way. If I wanted to open the door slightly, right? I've got, we all have doors, right? If I wanted to open the door slightly, I don't have to slam the door shut in order to do it. I can close it gently and open it. This is a glottal onset. Glottal onsets are a part of our language that we use all the time. So while they are risky in that they can turn into glottal attacks, right? They're healthy to do when proper, okay? But it's not about pressure under here. So I'm going to go, Then from there, what I can do is I can utilize false chord in its place. Once you can do that, move away from the glottal onset and use a W, an R, an L. These would be mixed onsets, or even an H, although that'll be a little bit more difficult. A Y. Right? If you want to do it with a high, or when I'm doing it with the high vocal, I feel like the closing is actually happening in the back of my mouth, not here. Okay? Something to think about. Anyways, let's keep going. This part. You can actually hear what I was talking about the lows right here when he says cleanse this. There's some gain on the vocals that's adding some extra crunch. That's kind of hiding that phonation underneath. But I kind of think of, again, he's going to be fine with some criticism. I kind of think of these as toddler vocals, right? I know that sounds harsh, but let me tell you what I mean. One thing my son does, my son's 13 months, he's 1, right? So does that count as a toddler? I don't know. But oftentimes he'll walk around the house and he'll go, oh, ah, ah, or like an older kid, right? I remember I was visiting a friend of mine and his son, the drummer in Cartership, actually. We were up in Canada. I think at the time his son was 3. And when he would get excited, he'd go, oh, oh, right? And the thing about it is, like, you can get away with that when you're a little tiny kid and you don't have, like, you know, a hard time controlling your vocal space. But as adults, when we walk around and we're like, this is my false chord vocal, we can really run into some issues if we're not supporting that right. And if our vocal cords are slapping together. And again, when we do these things, they don't always hurt in the moment. We feel our voice change over time. We might feel our voice get a little bit of chatter on it, right? Like when we sing or when we speak, it gets kind of buzzy or poppy. This can be from acid reflux, and that chatteriness is something that I deal with when my acid reflux is really sparking up. Yes, I get periodic checks from ENTs and I've been scoped by speech therapists. No, I don't have vocal nodules, but acid reflux can cause this too. But it also can cause issues on the edges of the vocal folds, and you do not want that, right? So instead, that's not to scare you. You just take your time and you learn it the right way, right? Right? Lean into it, voiceless. Feel that distortion in the back of the tongue. And if you're having difficulty, you can reach out to myself or any other vocal coach out there who specializes in harsh vocals, and they can help you out. Let's keep going. I'm going to pause it here because this coming up here was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard in my life at the point that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, right? Another thing that I think is really important to talk about is the tendency for people to overproject when they do metal vocals or really any type of distorted vocal. And what do I mean by overprojection? Put simply, pushing too hard and pushing from here, right? So what is a way that we can make sure that we're not overprojecting? Well, the first thing, number one, like overprojection is usually an issue that when I get a student who is overprojecting, I don't care how long they've been doing vocals. I don't care if they've gone on tour, 6 months out of the year for the last 5 years. We're going back to the fundamentals because overprojection is oftentimes a very interwoven, very delicate and difficult issue. Okay. So the first way is you learn correctly from the beginning, right? You learn about breath support. You learn about distortion free of tension, right? You learn about resonance and vocal placement. Cool. Okay. What if you already know all that stuff and you can do this? Okay. Well, one thing you can do is you can kind of think of like relaxedly leaning into it. And what I mean, and notice how I'm swaying forward, like I'm swaying back and forth, right? One thing that you can do is you can think of your voice as kind of being like on an ebb and a flow. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can take your clean voice and you can go, or let me start back here. Notice how my throat never tensed. You could hear that. You would hear it if it did, right? No. I'm saying and my goal is to feel that E behind my nose. I'm not going hypernasal. I'm staying in my mouth, right? Make your jokes in the comments. I'm keeping my resonance in my mouth, but I'm keeping it kind of in the cheekbones, behind the nose. The maxilla is the bone I'm aiming at, okay? Now, assuming I have a good baseline false chord sound, right? I'm going to go, and if you're wondering what the swaying back and forth does, is it just helps some people kind of get into the mindset. It's a little bit of a distraction thing. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to do it. You can just kind of focus on tiny little crescendos, or right? And when you do this, you'll find that you'll get to a place where you can use your harsh vocals as a speaking voice. You won't necessarily be able to go at the same pattern, or I'm sorry, at the same tempo, right? You may not have the same cadence, but for example, if I was to read, I don't know, Anguished Unmaking. Whoop, there we go. Whoop, there it is. Anguished Unmaking. Okay. Anguished Unmaking. One colorless, plains in a swamp. Instant. Exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. That's a good card. Holy cannoli. 3 life. Who gives a fuck? Especially since everybody plays Commander these days. 3 life? It's free. Sorry. Anyway, it's been a long time since I played Magic, so I kind of forgot what this card did. Anyway, it's nothing. Especially if, okay, I'm sorry. So I'm going to take this. Hey, Anguished Unmaking. 1 colorless, 1 plains, 1 swamp. Instant. Exile target on that permanent, you lose 3 life. Hey, Anguished Unmaking. 1 colorless, 1 plains, 1 swamp. Instant. Exile target on that permanent, you lose 3 life. Now, it doesn't have to sound cool. It has to be comfortable and controlled, right? So these are different things you can think about. You don't have to push hard, and you don't have to focus on volume. If you're loud, it's a byproduct of doing things properly. But some vocals are quiet, and that's okay too. I'm about to hit a soapbox, so let's keep going. I forgot about that part. We'll leave it in. Who cares? Anyways, I don't know why, but I felt like getting really nostalgic. Hopefully this video was helpful. Oftentimes when I'm doing reactions on this channel, I focus on things that are going well. So I thought maybe it'd be good to talk about some things that we could do a little bit better or healthier. And also shout out to Ferna2294. I have no idea who this is, but I was trying to find this video and I forgot how dark it was, and it was all pixelated and crappy. And so they uploaded this. I don't know if they did or they found it from somewhere. Listen, I don't know. But HD 60 FPS, thank you very much. That was a huge asset, and I appreciate your kindness and grace. Holy cow, it's 4:20. Blaze. I got to go pick up my kid from daycare. So if you like the content, like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to watch the channel grow. Check out cartervoxacademy.com if you'd like to learn more. Whether you are already an amazing vocalist and you want to learn things that are more advanced, or you want to learn the absolute bare bones foundation so you can move forward in a healthy way, I'm here to help you out. Many thanks, much love, I'm out.